coming up on this episode of Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton.
Here we are, episode number 3. My special guest today is Eric Smith, a.k.a. Rick Taylor from K107 and K-Hits, or Eric Wayne from KVOO and Kick 99. Hey, Eric spent about 24 years behind the mic, up and down the radio dial. He's hosted a Red Dirt music show. He's worked as a private investigator and even became a Tulsa police officer. But there's more to Eric than just those things. He also is a great husband, a wonderful father, and he loves to sail. He's had some hardships in his life. We'll learn more about that as well. Plus, he's got some great radio stories I can't wait for you to hear. So, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright position. Make sure that seatbelt is securely fastened. We are ready for takeoff.
Welcome to the Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton podcast, brought to you by Mojo Merchandise. Join radio veteran Ric Hampton and his guests for informative and entertaining discussions as they take you behind the scenes, behind the stories, behind the music, and more. Originating from the Big Daddy Studios, it's time to go behind the mic, and here's your host, Ric Hampton.
We're kicking off episode number 3. I am Ric Hampton, and thanks for joining me. I have got a great show for you coming up, and if you like what you hear, you don't want to miss an episode, it's easy to find us. Just go to Facebook and search Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton. My special guest today has been up and down the radio dial for about 24 years. He went by Rick Taylor. He also went by Eric Wayne. But my special guest today is Eric Smith. And I have a hard time calling you Eric Smith because I called you Eric Wayne for so long because that was your air name.
That was.
So how long were you in radio from the time you started till the time you got out?
I started in 1984, and I left radio. I left KVOO and Big Country and those in 2008. So 24 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I know.
Wow.
I know,
Man,
right?
That's a long time.
It was a long time. I was just close to the gold watch, and
right.
I got out of it 1 year shy of that.
Wow. So, see, I didn't even know that. So where did you first start?
I first started at KVRO, Cowboy Varsity Radio of Oklahoma.
Wow.
It was on the Strip in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Nice.
I had just graduated high school. I graduated high school in spring of '84 and started my freshman year at OSU. And started at that. It was a campus radio station. It was on the Strip above the Coney Island, but that's where I started because I was a journalism major and got started immediately in radio.
So what format was
fall
that?
Of '84. It was kind of a rock and roll college rock format. That was before CDs, so everything was on album. And so we queued up all the albums. Everything had Q Burns on it and stuff, and you know what that means. So everything was on, all the commercials were on carts, the old carts that you had to wind yourself. Everything's on album and the good old days.
Yeah, man. That was the good old days, actually.
Man,
I'm glad I learned all the stuff on there because there's some things even now that most kids, and I call them kids because anybody that's in radio like that that's younger, they just don't get. They don't understand that mystique behind it.
Yeah, and the board was pots.
Huge knobs, no sliders, huge consoles, and big headphones. So when you graduated from OSU, did you head to Tulsa?
Yeah, my wife and I got married while we were in college.
Wow, so let me do math. I wasn't expecting to do math yet, but that would be what, 31 years?
31st.
Wow.
Anniversary.
Big shout out to Jen.
Yeah, so
been a long time since I've seen her, and the kids too, for that matter. My gosh, I know, man. They're all what are they all like?
18,
mid
19,
30s,
21.
Right? Okay,
I know.
I started to say, it's amazing.
Kids 18, 19, 21.
Wow.
But yeah, this Friday, 31 years. So my wife and I got married very young in college, still together. Thank God. And what was your question now? I already forgot.
When did you move to Tulsa?
Oh, yeah. Graduated. My wife is 2 years younger than me, but I started college in the fall of '84. She started later. She graduated in '89, and I was on the 7-year plan. I graduated in '91, and we moved to Tulsa in '93. She's from Tulsa. Went to the Tulsa Hale.
Go Rangers.
Graduated there. And so we moved here in '93, and I started in radio here in Tulsa in '93.
And where was that at?
That was at K-Hits 106.9. I was Rick Taylor doing the overnights.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So was it K-Hits by then?
No, actually,
when I
first started, it was K107, and Andy Barber was there. Mm-hmm. And then shortly after I started, like within 6 months, they switched to K-Hits. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
And Carly Rush was there at the time.
Jan Dean?
No, she had already left.
Okay.
All I remember, I did the overnights. I think Chucky Stevens was there. Yeah, Chuck did 7 to midnight. I did midnight to 6. Andy Barber did 6 to 10. I think Carly did 10 to 2. And I can't remember who did afternoon drive.
Now, we just lost John Landers not too long ago.
Yeah.
Now, was he
was there.
Okay.
And he was doing weekends there and doing bingo, calling bingo during the weekend.
And I remember that. And then also doing Fantasia as a little. Was he still doing that?
I don't remember that
DJ thing. We were talking about that. I was talking with Sarah Woodard, and we were discussing John and how that he had this Fantasia thing, and a lot of people didn't know that he had a DJ business.
I didn't realize.
On the side, and he was nuts. I mean, you thought he was nuts in the studio. He was crazy good,
awesome
in person like that. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. There's a lot of people that know John well, but didn't know that he did the Fantasia thing.
And I just remembered as we were talking, Big Mark Clark did afternoon drive,
yes,
3 to
Big
7.
Mark Clark.
Big Mark Clark.
I
think he was the PD there too.
Wow.
Or no, Mike Ring was the PD there. But Big Mark, I think, did music or something there. He did something there, but he did afternoon drive.
So then once you left K107 or in K-Heads, is that when you made the move over across town? Or?
I did move across town, but not to KVOO. I was at K-Hits from 93 to 95. In 95, I went over to, oh my gosh, where did I go? KRAV.
Okay. Which would later become
Mix 96.
Then was the KRAV.
So I went over there, and I started there in 95. I did 7 to midnight until 98. And then that's when I came to KVOO in 98, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
So it's funny because, we talk about it and it doesn't seem out of the ordinary, but when you think about radio, I was there from 95 until 2007 at KVOO. And so for me, that was the longest I'd ever been at any
The longest
place.
I'd ever been at Station 2 was when I was at KVOO, almost 10 years.
And I think part of that was because the initial, when I first got there, Great Empire Broadcasting owned that out of Wichita with the 2 Mikes, Mike Oatman and Mike Lynch.
Okay.
But both of them were there, and it was such a family atmosphere, and it was such a great time. I used to hear all the stories from other radio guys about how many stations they'd been at and everything else. And growing up, I watched WKRP with Johnny Fever, Howard Hesman's, character, and he would have to look at the mug to see what city he was in and that kind of thing. And so all those stories, came about, and I remember thinking, wow, I'm still doing this. And I've been here since 1995. I've been through like 3 or 4 GMs by now, know. What was it that I guess kind of drew you out of radio? Was there a deciding factor that, hey, I've kind of done this as much as I want to do it?
When I started at KVOO, it's funny. That's the station I grew up listening to. In my house, that was what was on. I listened to Billy Parker. I'm sure you're going to send more.
Yeah.
So it's funny, at that point, when I started at KVOO, I'd probably been in radio 15 years at that point. My dad finally said, I made it. You made it, boy. And I always knew when I started at KVOO, when I left KVOO, I was either going to retire, whatever age, 60s or whatever, or I'd leave there and I'd never work in radio again. Because to me, KVOO is the top.
That was the hit.
That was it, man.
Where it was at, yep.
And I still have the option, as you do too, to get back into radio. I just don't, and I love radio, and maybe someday I'll do it part-time, but I'm not going to do it full-time anymore. I feel like I did KVOO, and I did mornings there for a while, and to me, that was the top, man. That's where Billy Parker worked. My gosh, it doesn't get any bigger, in my book, than KVOO. When I left there in 2008, I'd been in radio 24 years, loved every day, every minute of being in radio, but it was just time to move on. Man, I was in my mid-40s, and it was just time to career change, time to make a career change, and I wasn't getting any younger, and so that was the decision. And management, of course, they wanted me gone anyway. I mean, so management kind of nudged me out the door, and I went out the door willingly, and haven't regretted it. Like I said, I loved every minute. I loved every station I was at, but it was just time to move on.
Do you miss it?
There are times I miss it. I was a cop for a while too. I don't even know if you know that. And every once in a while I say, I miss being a cop, and my wife's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you don't, son. And I think about it, and you're right. I don't miss being a cop, but I do miss radio sometimes because, man, you know how it is. We got to do everything. We get so jaded because we got to go backstage and eat the food and be with the artists and hang out. And now now I'm so jaded I won't go to a concert unless I can go backstage and
Right.
eat the food and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, do you want to go see Bruce Springsteen? Well, can we get backstage? No. Well,
Well,
I ain't going,
okay.
man.
Yeah, I don't
you know,
wanna
if
be
I
there.
can't hang with the boss, why am I going? And that's sad to say that, right?
Right.
But we get so used to the perks and all the fun we had because the more you goofed off and the more you had fun, the better you sounded on the radio. So you were encouraged to goof off and have fun. When you leave that environment, you got to go to a real desk job,
Right.
which I love, by the way. I love my job. It was just time to move on. I'd been 24 years, time to go on.
Toby and I talked about was Billy and
Yeah.
how that, I mean, he played a big role in his life before he even made it to radio, to KVOO or any
really?
of those. He said the same, that the influence was there. He learned a lot, and I did too. I mean, that's probably the one thing that I learned from Billy, and I will attribute to him every time, is how to treat people in radio.
Definitely.
Because,
Definitely.
and I said it and I'll say it again, and that is that when you talk to Billy, you were the only person talking to Billy.
Exactly.
There could be hundreds around you, but you were the focus. That's it. He made you feel like $1 million.
Exactly.
And that's what he said. He said, you know what? That's the key right there. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Make sure they feel like $1 million and that you pay attention to them, because they're the ones that put you there. And they're the ones that are going to keep you on the radio. So they're going to keep you in the public. So always treat them that way. So that was probably my biggest influence in radio, was Billy Parker, because I had grown up listening to him, and then to meet him and then to actually work with him.
Yeah.
I learned so much from him. Who was your biggest influence in radio?
Billy Parker is up there, and it's funny that you say all those good things about Billy. That's the number one takeaway I have from Billy Parker too. He taught you how to treat people. You thought that Billy was your best friend, and that's the way Billy treated you. Whether he even knew your name or not, he acted like you were his best friend, and thank you for coming out, and we appreciate it. He was the best at that.
Agreed.
If I saw him today, he may not even remember. I haven't seen him in 10 years, but he'd sure act like he remembered me, even if he didn't. He's just like that. My biggest, it's funny that you say my biggest radio influence, and this is going to sound strange, but one of the reasons I got into radio is my older brother. He's 5 years older than me. He graduated Oklahoma State while I was still in high school, and he was a journalism major. He works in TV. He's worked in TV since he graduated. Gosh, I think he graduated college in 83.
Wow.
83, 84, right around there. And he's worked at Channel 4 in Oklahoma City since then, since that day he graduated. He's a director up there. But in college, he did radio. But I'm the youngest of three, and so I always looked up to my bigger brother, older brother, and man, he always walked on water. And so when he was on the radio, I'd listen to him all the time. That's the coolest thing. I want to be just like you. So honestly, I got into radio and did all that because of him.
Nice.
And I wanted to be like my big brother.
Nice.
And then I got into it and loved it, and he moved on to TV, which is cool, which is what he loved. I stayed in radio, which is what I love. But really, my biggest radio influence was probably my brother.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
Yeah,
Terry.
that's cool. See, I started to say Terry. I remember that. See, I didn't know he was in. I don't guess I remembered that he was in radio.
Yeah,
I just
he did.
knew him whenever he was in TV.
Yeah, he
Channel
did. He
4.
did college radio for probably about 4 years there at OSU, and
Nice.
then moved into TV. And
Nice.
but I used to listen to him every day.
Yeah,
every
he's
day.
good at the TV thing. That's
He's
for
great
sure.
at TV.
Yeah, he
and,
is. He's excellent at that.
Yeah.
I will tell you that. Okay, so we've kind of talked about your history as far as the past and things like that. What is the weirdest or strangest listener story you've got? And it doesn't have to be from KVOO. It doesn't have to be when we work together even. It could have been before that. But what is your strangest one that you might tell all the time?
Man, listener story, strange listener story. God, there's been a lot of them. I used to just make things up on the radio, as we all did, and you might remember. Seemed like one guy started at KVOO. I was wearing some, you may know the story I'm getting ready to tell. I was wearing some scrubs from when my daughter was born, or my son, or I don't remember, whatever. I think his name James?
James.
Was it James?
Yes.
And he was like, "How you doing, brother?" And I was like, "All right, man." And he's like, "You here to be a DJ?" I said, "Yeah, And he's like, "Are you a doctor?" Yeah.
Yes, I sure am.
And so I just started making up all this stuff, and I think you were a part of that.
And you
he
did have a
believed,
pager, by the way.
Did I?
You did have a
Oh,
pager.
I don't
See,
remember
I
that,
remember.
but
No,
I-
I remember
hey,
that,
all right.
and I will tell you, it was actually his first day.
Was it?
You were
Okay.
training him because
Okay.
it was right after Steve Jeffries left, and he started 7 to midnight.
Okay.
And so you were training because you were doing afternoons on Kick 99 then,
Gotcha.
or 99.5 The Bull,
Sure.
or whatever it was then. And so, but we were in that tiny little closet of a studio
Oh, yeah, I think
by the newsroom. And it literally was the closet for a while. It was like a supply closet that they cleared out and put a studio in there.
Yeah.
And so you were wearing scrubs, and I don't even really know why. I mean,
I just had them because one of my kids was born. I just had them laying around, and they were comfortable. I threw them on, man.
Right.
I don't know.
But you did own a pager because that was what
funny.
sealed the deal. Because he kept asking me, and so of course I'm like, yeah. You know, he just does this part-time. I mean, he's saving lives during the day, you know, overnight or whatever, and then he comes in here and does a shift, and then he goes back to work, man.
Yeah.
And so, man, that's right. We had perpetuated that lie for,
a long time.
I don't know how long.
Long time.
I mean, I think it was one of those things even he found out kind of after the statute of limitations ran out on it. Because, I mean, it was like, you know, he just all of a sudden, poof. So that brings me to the next one then. My favorite story of yours is the wooden toe story.
Yeah, that still comes up now and again. And I don't even remember how that started. I know I've broken my left big toe. I don't keep score. But honestly, I've broken my left big toe probably 20 times. And that when I first broke it, I'd had young kids at the time, and I didn't have the money to go to the doctor and get it set. And so obviously it never got set correctly. And so it breaks real easy, literally real easy. I could stub my toe here, and it would break. And so I guess at one point we were going to Silver Dollar City or something, and somebody asked me what I was doing. I said I was getting a new toe whittled or something. Yes. I forget even how that came up, but then that just kind of came to be the go-to thing after a while.
Well, let me tell you,
a new toe whittled at Silver Dollar City.
You would come back, and one of the first people was James Kelly. He was the guy who did
his last name. Yeah,
rest his soul.
Yeah.
It piqued his interest for some reason. For some reason, he latched hold of that, and so he asked a bunch of people to the point where it finally got to Randy Bush.
Oh no!
And Randy actually thought that you had a toe whittled out of wood because most people would not go against your word. You were not known for making up stories necessarily like that. So, well, if Eric says that he went to, Silver Dollar City, I mean, if somebody actually told you in the real world that story, you'd be like, whatever.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously? Come on now. But in radio, it's possible.
Exactly.
I mean, there's some artisan in downtown Silver Dollar City right now whittling you a toe.
And every few years or however so often, I'd be going back, and they'd be like, what are you doing? Well, I had a termite infestation on my big toe. Got to get a new one.
Yep.
Right. I was swimming a lot, and wood in water will swell up and crack. So you got to get a new wooden toe every once in a while, whittled at Silver Dollar City, and it just became this thing.
I'm pretty sure. Didn't you call it a tone up or something like that?
It could be, man.
Tone up instead of a tune up. I got to go back to Branson for a tone up or something like that. I was like, oh my gosh.
Maybe.
It was just crazy. There was a guy who was a conspiracy theorist that worked there for a while too. I want to say his name was Greg. But he didn't last long, and he was just a board op. He was the same guy that was kind of like James in the aspect of he kind of believe anything, but he was a conspiracy theorist. So John Landers told him one time that there were cameras in every one of the thermostats in the building because they were Johnson controlled thermostats, and they were just a little small box, but they had this little tiny hole in there. And so it worked great. Right. So John had him convinced that, the big brother, the man, was watching everything in every studio. Right. So, be careful what you do, man. They're watching you. They're keeping a tight rein on you. Out of Wichita. Oh, Lordy.
And I don't want to speak ill of James Kelly, but I got to tell a story, and I won't tell all the details. But he was on the air one night, 7 to midnight or midnight to 6, whatever he did, and he got a butt whooping on the air. A butt whooping.
He did.
On the air. And I don't want to say any more details, but he got jacked up.
He did. There was a situation, and I won't either, but exactly. I will say, I remember I got a call. It was like 11 o'clock at night.
It was late.
Leaving Tulsa City limits one night. We had done a remote there with KVOO. He was on Kick 99. I get this phone call on the cell phone, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And he goes, man, can you come back to the radio station? I've been hit. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, I've been hit. Can you come back to the radio station? I need you back here right now. I was like, well, I'm actually headed back there to bring the van back. So, yeah, I'm coming back. Okay, man. So the whole way back, I'm thinking, okay, I've been hit. Has he been physically struck? Or was it like me where I would throw in a couple of tracks and drive down to the convenience store there at 31st and Yale and then come back?
Sure.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he was in the intersection and got T-boned or something. Oh, my gosh, crazy or whatever. I get back. Nope, he's back at the studio. when I pull in, I had kind of a physical confrontation with a couple of people in the parking lot. I said, hey, man, this is private property. You need to go ahead and move on, go on down the road. I get inside. He had physically been hit, and not only had he been hit, but he'd been cut from like just below his eye down to about his chin.
Really? Wow, I didn't know that.
By a broken CD.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, there was an altercation or two, and it was crazy. So that was probably the craziest for me. My story, I think, for that time period was our first year doing Country Fever, 2003, I think it was. I think it was 2003 or 2004, somewhere in there. We were giving away passes. A guy won on my show, so I gave him passes. Well, whenever I was getting his information so he could come pick up the tickets from the radio station, he was telling me his story, how he was a single dad, he was in the military, so I wound up getting another pass or so that they could all go together.
Wow, all right.
I'm on the air, and I remember, it was so hot in that little shed that we did remotes from. I mean, it was terrible. It was like 150 degrees, and I'd been out there all afternoon long, so it was humid too, so it was even worse. And I remember I'm drenched in sweat, and I'm looking out, and here comes this whole group of people headed my way with white T-shirts on. And as I get closer, I realize that they're all handmade T-shirts from this guy and these kids. Wow. They had all made their own T-shirts, and they all said, like, we love KVOO on it. And then the back said, thanks, Big Daddy.
Cool.
And they told me the story that he was like, I would have never been able to do this for my kids. Winning the passes were awesome. So he gave me his military coin.
Oh, wow.
That he has. And I still have that. I mean, that's probably one of my most prized possessions because, those don't get given out just, on a whim. I mean, those are something that's a very special thing. And I don't even know the guy. I don't know his name or anything else. But if he were to listen or if he would hear this, I will tell you, I still have that coin.
Wow.
To me, that was probably one of the coolest things. That, and then probably all the radiothons we did for Children's Miracle Network and for St. Jude.
Those were tough weeks, but
they were
gratifying,
really tough weeks.
Very gratifying.
It was always rough for me for little bitty kids, 6 and 8 years old, to have to know any of that lingo or that jargon.
Right.
Associated with that. And typically they could explain it better than their mom or dad could.
Of course.
And that's such a tragedy.
That's horrible.
It's terrible. But one more radio thing.
All right.
And this is this. Do you believe, another picture that I came across the other day was all 5 of us, and it was the air staff at the time. Do you remember mall matrimony?
Yeah, I remember.
At Promenade Mall.
We wore those tuxes and got people married there at Promenade Mall. Yeah.
Yeah, for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Sonny and Gene and Andy, me, you. Yeah.
So I have found that picture the other day in my pictures too of all of us standing on the stage with our tuxes on.
I had really long tails.
Yes,
really long tails. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember we went and got fitted for tuxes, and you were like, I think I'm going to do tails.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Sure.
I mean, it's free. Why not do it? Yeah, I remember that. So, that was a crazy one too. I thought, gosh, they don't do stuff like that very often anymore. Can you imagine that though?
I know. Right?
We thought it was crazy because we married, I don't know how many couples, but it was a lot. I mean, there was like 50 or something couples. And then the winner of the contest part of it, the last wedding of the day, and they got flowers and decorations and a reception and all kinds of stuff. But it was like the last wedding of the day, and it was just crazy. It was like right there in the, I think where Santa usually is in Promenade.
It was right
where they do that. So that's crazy. All right. So radio wise, you had a great career, and then you moved on. What did you move on to?
When I first left KVOO, my dad was a reserve deputy sheriff in Payne County, which is Stillwater. And then when he retired, he owned his own security company, so he did security guard type stuff. And so when I left radio, I was like, well, I kind of have an interest in that. Let me go that route, see how that works. And so I became a private investigator, and did private investigations all over the state of Oklahoma, some in Texas, some in Kansas City. And then that led me into, I did that for a while, and then that led me into, well, let's just go the extra mile and become a full-blown cop.
Oh, wow.
And so went through cleat training, became a cop here in Tulsa, and that didn't work. All of a sudden it becomes real, man. Yeah. People out on the streets want to shoot you and stab you and everything. And so being a cop, you really have to have a calling for that. And it became real evident real quick it was not my calling. And I knew somebody was going to get hurt. Either I was going to hurt somebody or I was going to hurt myself. And so I was always stressed And so I'd come home at night stressed and couldn't sleep. And when I did sleep, I'd have nightmares. I probably wasn't treating my wife and kids very well. And so it's time to make a change. So I did law enforcement for about 4 years. And then it's like, no. But I enjoyed it all. I mean, it was great, but it just wasn't my calling. Right. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I became an officer. I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of the fact that when you become an officer, they make you run all these obstacle courses, and you have to run a mile in like 30 seconds and all this other junk. They only have one test, whether you're 18 years old or 44, which was what I was. And by God, I passed at age 44 along with the 18-year-olds. We started with a class of 115, and only 11 graduated, and I was one of those 11. I'm very proud of that. That is cool. And my career just didn't work out, and that's okay. But I'm very proud of that period of time, and I'm glad I did.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know about the cop. I knew about the private eye thing, and I knew you were very secretive about that. You really didn't make that known either.
Yeah, it was all undercover work. Yeah. All undercover, scary. Most 99% of it very boring and bland, and this sucks. Then that 1%, huge adrenaline rush, like jumping out of an airplane.
Oh, wow.
Get ready.
Yeah, no kidding. Absolutely. Wow. Hey, coming up, we have got more with Eric Wayne. We're going to go a little deeper with his life and kind of what he's up to now. Plus, still share some of those radio stories with you. It's coming up. And if you like what you hear, hey, don't miss an episode. Jump on over to Facebook right now and search Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton. You'll find all the information plus pictures from this episode that I'll be sharing on there as well. Just search Facebook, Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton.
Don't go anywhere. More of the Behind the Mic podcast is next.
I'm Mo.
And I'm Sheila Joe. And we're Mojo Merchandise. Mojo Merchandise was created by two friends with a craft passion.
We love to make things as gifts, like baby shower presents, wedding shower presents, party decorations, and balloon bouquets.
There is nothing we can't do once we put our mind to it.
We specialize in vinyl printed t-shirts,
home decor signs, pillowcases, cups, and much more.
If you have a favorite scripture or a mom saying you want on a t-shirt or sign, we've got you covered.
If you have an idea or needing a gift, let Mojo Merchandise make exactly what you need.
You're listening to Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton.
Thanks, Candace. We are back with episode 3, talking to my friend Eric Smith. You may know him better as Rick Taylor from K-Hits and K107, or as I do, and Eric Wayne from Kick 99 and KVOO in Tulsa. Now, I want to talk about a motto that you have for your life. It's everywhere. If you're on your Facebook page, you see it. You usually have an anchor somewhere on you, but the motto is, I refuse to sink. I know that you kind of developed a love for sailing, and then later on it would have a deeper meaning. Even sitting here now, I see an anchor on your hat.
There you go. I got the little anchor right there on my hat. I always have an anchor on me somewhere at all times.
Tell everybody.
I discovered sailing late in life. My father-in-law, who lives out on Keystone Lake, bought a sailboat years ago. And he bought it. He just lives right off the lake, but he's in his 70s. And he was like, I bought this sailboat because I really want to sail. And it turns out it was too much for him to get out and sail by himself. He couldn't launch it. He couldn't control it. It was just too much. He was too old, and it was just too much and too big. It sat on his property for years. Every time we'd go out there and he'd call and say, hey, man, take the sailboat out. I'd never been on a sailboat in my life, had no interest in it, nothing. But I got to where he would ask me all the time, and finally I just said, all right, I'll take it out. I feel bad that you bought this sailboat. It's never been in the water once. Just to appease you, I'll take it out. And I fell in love with sailing.
Right.
Oh, my gosh. I fell in love with sailing. So my wife and I bought a couple boats, and we go sailing all the time. That is our passion. We go, when it's nice out, we go sailing twice a week. We go out sailing. My wife works downtown. I work downtown as well. So we get off work at 5 o'clock. We keep our main sailboat at Oologah Lake. We can be on our boat in 30 minutes from the drive to work to on our boat in 30 minutes and have it launched. It's in the slip, so we can have it launched in about 5 minutes. So during the nice months, which start about March, we'll do an evening sail in the middle of the week, like Wednesday, Thursday. We'll go take a sunset sail and Starry Night. So It's nice, romantic, once a week in the middle of the week. And then we go sailing either all day Saturday or all day Sunday. But the way the phrase came along, I don't even know where I got that phrase, but I do know what it's attached to is Easter Sunday of 2015. I don't know if you say that. I caught it, whatever you want to say. I got cancer. And so that just kind of became my catchphrase. Like, I refuse to sink. It was attached to an anchor in the boat, and I'm just not going to let this thing take me down.
What was that like? I mean, you kind of joked that I got it or I received it or whatever, but I guess share with everybody what was your thought process at that point. I mean,
sure. Here's the deal. I've always been someone who goes to church every Sunday and been involved in the church and all that, and that's all good and well. But some things sometimes happen in your life, and you don't want to question God, but sometimes you do. Mm-hmm. Easter Sunday, 2015, my wife and I were headed to church, all three of the kids in the car. My wife's driving. We dropped the kids off at the church. We actually went to the church, and my wife's like, I forgot something. Let's drop the kids off, go back home, got to get it. So we dropped the kids off at the church. We went back home to get whatever she needed to get. We're driving westbound on the Broken Arrow Expressway. We get off right there at the off-ramp at Harvard. We come down to the bottom of that off-ramp. We are facing westbound at a red light, getting ready to turn left. Our church is at 34th and Harvard, Christ United Methodist Church. Light turns green. My wife is driving. She pulls out into the intersection. A guy heading northbound on Harvard Avenue runs his red light and slams into our van. Slams right in front of my wife's door, luckily, and then it pushed us across a couple lanes and pinned my door up against a light pole there. I was actually on the phone, luckily. I guess, I don't know, it scared my youngest son, Ty, to death. I think he was probably 15 at the time. I was on the phone with him when this happened. I was talking to him going, hey, we're about back to church. Mom had to get something. And I'm on the phone. This wreck happens, pushes us up against the light pole. Airbags go off. I get knocked out. The impact of the airbags, along with smoke and everything else, when I woke up, I couldn't breathe. But the impact made the phone fly out of my hands. So my son, Ty, is on the phone listening. He's at church, just right down the road. Mm-hmm. He's listening. All he hears is this huge clang, clash, commotion. And then he hears my wife, Jennifer, saying, Eric, wake up. Wake up, Eric. Wake up. And I finally wake up, and I can't breathe. And she's saying, breathe, Eric. And so my son, Ty, knows we've been in a car accident, and I'm right down the road, and for all he knows, I'm about to die because I'm not waking up and I'm not breathing.
Right.
So I wake up, cough, start breathing. I can't get out of the car because I'm pinned in up against this light pole. Ambulance comes, get my wife and I out of there. I think they cut me out. Not that there was so much damage they had to cut me out, but I was just pinned up against the pole.
Right.
Because I wasn't hurt that bad. I mean, I had some injuries, but not bad. So they take us to St. John's. In the meantime, my son is on, he'd heard all this happening, and he's telling people in the church, and he gets to ride down, half a mile away, and he's at the scene. My two boys both at the scene, and then they got my daughter, and she came, so all the kids are at the scene, which was crazy. And they take us to St. John's Hospital. Okay, my injuries were concussion and mainly chest injuries. So, not that you question God, but sometimes you question God. And you start saying, you're in the hospital room all banged up due to no fault of your own, and you start saying, why did you put me here? Why did you have this happen to me? Mm-hmm. Well, I found out. They did a bunch of tests on me because I had a lot of chest injuries, things like that, head injuries. They found out due to those tests they ran that I had cancer. Had I not been in that accident, I'd just still be sitting here, or I might not be sitting here today. Right. The type of cancer I had, my doctor initially, he told me that the kind of cancer I had, it would not have manifested itself until about a month before I died. He said about a month before I died that I would have got sick, thought I had the flu, kind of stayed at home for a week or two, thinking I had the flu. It would have got worse and worse. I would have eventually gone to the doctor. They would have probably taken a week to do all the tests and figured it out, and then I would have been dead within another week.
Wow.
So, had it not been for that accident, may or may not be here right now.
Right.
Don't question God.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's human to think that, but
of course.
It's in His timing and His will, and that's the thing. You were telling me that you're going again for more tests. So,
yeah.
Is this an ongoing thing a lot, or because I remember there was a time there you were talking about you were in remission, or you had been to several appointments.
Right.
So has it returned? Or
yes and no. I had to have surgeries and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I had kidney cancer, by the way. So I went through the process. And when you have cancer, they don't just take the cancer out or do your test and then send you home and go Hope you live a healthy life.
Good job.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You go back every 3 months and you take CAT scans and you draw blood. I mean, it's every 3 months. You go religiously. I think you do that for 3 years. And then I think after 3 years, if you're good, they do it once a year. I went through all that in 2015. And then, so every 3 months, I'm going back, so they're doing CAT scans to make sure it hasn't returned or whatever. In June of 2016, they said I was cancer-free. So June 2016, things are great. Cancer-free, everything's good. But you still got to go back every 3 months. Like I said, for about a couple, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
My doctor told me that my cancer, it was not due to anything I did. It wasn't due to smoking. I was not a smoker. It wasn't due to my diet. I just had the type of cancer that they don't know how it came about, but I just got it.
It just happens.
Yeah, and that's a bad day in the doctor's office when they tell you got cancer. That's not the funnest day you've ever had in your life.
Right.
So June of 2016, I'm cancer-free. I'm going to the, radiologist and everybody every 3 months. And I believe that lasted 6 months. I think it was December of 2016, November, December, right around in there, that I go in for more tests. And they're like, well, your kidney, you're cancer-free. But my doctor told me all along the kind of cancer I had, he said, if it's going to spread, it'll spread into one of the L's, liver, lymph nodes, lungs. So a little over a year ago, November, December 2016, right around in there, routine CAT scan, whatever it was. The kidney's all right, but we got some lung problems. And not only that, but it's in a bad spot. Going in and removing it or doing whatever would actually, at this stage, cause more damage. So they just put me on a holding pattern. And you go every 3 months. So now I'm going to a kidney doctor every 3 months. Now I'm going to a lung doctor every 3 months. And it's one of those things, they caught it early, because the CAT scan 3 months ago, I didn't have anything.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the next one, I've got it. So they've caught it early. Not that any cancer is good, but there are worse cancers than others, and lung cancer is not a good one, man.
Right.
The kidney cancer I had is pretty curable. The lung cancer is not as curable. It's a bad one. We got it early. At least we found it early. Started going to a lung cancer specialist, going there every 3 months. And, just through, when I first was diagnosed with cancer and told, I kept it very private. Only my family knew. That was it.
Right.
And it was going to be my private thing I'm going through. And then eventually, when I would talk to people, it's like the power of prayer is too big to deny. You can't deny that.
Right.
So one day I just put it out there on Facebook. Here's what I'm going through. And everybody responded. And then there, people would send me nice notes and things like that. And then cancer-free, everybody's on my side, everything's good. Then when it came back, I put it out there again. And so I'm going to this lung cancer specialist, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I think I do, but I don't know what it is. But the last few times I've been back, I still have it, but it's actually shrinking. And that doesn't happen very often.
That's right.
I don't know. We still haven't. It's still in a bad spot, and the only way they're willing to go in and start messing with it is once it grows to a certain size, which is also bad.
Right.
But 3 months ago, it is still shrinking, and that just doesn't happen with cancer.
Eric, I'm a firm believer in the power of prayer. I work for a church, and I live that, and I have. For quite some time now. I've been in the ministry now for since probably around 2008, 2009.
Right.
And I firmly believe in the power of prayer. And I think that the more people you have praying and that who earnestly pray for you, I believe that. And I believe that is God working in your life to shrink that. Because
I believe
he has
so too.
other things for you. I know that you're proud of your family. I love watching the Facebook posts.
My son made the football team.
Yeah.
He was a kicker.
I mean, he was a kicker.
I know,
that's just incredible.
He'd never played football a day in his life, and he got on the football team in his senior year. And he was always a soccer player. And then all of a sudden, he was like, you know what? The kicker on this football team graduated. They're going to need a kicker. You think I could do it? I was like, well, most of those guys are soccer players. And so what's really funny is a friend of mine, Jason Starosky, used to be a kicker for the Patriots for years, and the Jets, and I think the Broncos, too. I apologize, Jason, if I got that wrong. I know the Patriots and Jets. But it's like, well, if you're going to do this, let's do it right. And so we got Jason. He lives in Tulsa. We got Jason to coach Ty.
Nice.
Because it's a little bit of a kicking,
Sure.
different motion. But Ty had never played football a day in his life. And he went out and he made the team. as a senior at Edison High School, and he went out and kicked, and he made a 53-yarder. Never played football a day in his life, and at the end of the season, they do all district players, like the district running back of the year. Nice. This is for the whole district, not just the team. And he won district kicker of the year.
That's awesome.
Very proud of him. And the only scary part is a kicker doesn't normally have to tackle somebody unless they get past everybody else. So that was my only concern. He doesn't know how to tackle. He doesn't know how to take a hit. And Ty's not the biggest kid in the world. He's like 5. Well, now he's probably like 5'8", but $1.25. He's teeny. He's not a big kid.
Right. He's a kicker.
And so one day we're over there playing like East Central, I think, and he kicked off, man, and he kicked it into the end zone, and this kid took it out of the end zone, and this kid's running all the way back. And I'm like, oh, no. And these are big 18-year-old kids. I mean, I say kids. These are adults. This kid running this ball back is probably, 6 foot and 200 pounds, and he's running full steam at Ty, and Ty took him on, and Ty hit him. Didn't stop him.
Right.
Ty got put on his butt, but he tried, man.
Hey, that's right. No
and
kidding.
He got up,
that's awesome.
and everybody on the kid scored, but everybody on the team gave Ty high fives because he tried, man, and but he did real good. I was very proud of him. He'd never done that in his life. He went out, took the initiative, and he did that. And I was very proud of him.
That's awesome. So one of the things that we didn't touch on, but I know that it's important, and it's going to come up again here in a minute with the speed rounds because we're almost done.
All right.
But we have to do a speed round of questions.
All right.
One of the things we didn't touch on with you was your love for Red Dirt music.
Oh, yeah.
And how that was one of the things that was a great show. I loved the Red Dirt Radio Hour. With the boys from
Red Dirt
Rangers.
Yeah.
I love that. Plug you guys, Brad and John. That was so cool. I loved the show. One of the things that I loved about the show was the different types of music.
Oh, yeah.
I loved whenever we got the opportunity to do acoustic stuff.
Oh, of course.
Because to me, I love acoustic stuff. I was just watching a video, Marty Stewart and his guys.
Oh, yeah, he was here yesterday at the Woody Guthrie Center, I think.
And they were doing a Running Down the Dream by Tom Petty. If you see it on Facebook, watch it. It is the coolest thing. It is a great, great deal. Was that probably, you think, that was one of your highlights?
Definitely. I'm probably more proud of that show than anything. And what's weird is, this will tell you how much pull I had. I went to the GM and said, man, I'd love to do this Red Dirt show because some of my friends play Red Dirt music, The Great Divide and Ragweed and some other guys. And the GM was like, nope, I ain't doing that. Ain't going to happen. And then along come these hicks, lovingly, John and Brad, who didn't work at the radio station. They just came up and said, hey, and all of a sudden it's a show.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. Not because of Eric.
Right.
It was because of John and Brad. And luckily, I knew them from back in college and growing up in Stillwater. They're a few years older than me, but we knew each other in Stillwater. And so luckily, they asked me to engineer and stuff. And so I was a part of it. Just because it was all their show.
Right.
But I was just lucky to be just,
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I started to say after a bit, though, and it really, just a little bit, it really became the three of you guys.
I think so, too.
I mean, really, because they were always on the lookout for talent. Plus, they were, had the band, the Red Dirt Rangers, but they didn't want it to be about them all the time.
Right.
And so they really wanted to feature a lot of these, artists. So when you look at that dynamic, it was actually a very interesting dynamic because you got two guys who want to host the show about the very genre that they're playing.
Right.
But they're wanting to feature other people.
Artists, yeah.
So that ought to tell you something, the love of that music. Be thinking along those lines because in just a minute, I'm going to put you on the spot when we go to the speed round. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back with the speed round of questions.
Cool.
Want to hear more? You can subscribe to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, and Google Play Music. Become a part of the discussion. Join us on Facebook. Search Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton. Behind the Mic Speed Round.
All right, it is time for the Behind the Mic Speed Round, and in the hot seat is Eric Wayne. And Eric, just all you have to do is just answer it as quickly as you can. We'll just go question after question, all right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's put 2 minutes on the clock, and your time starts when I ask the first question.
Try my best.
All right, if you could live anywhere on the planet, where would it be?
Jamaica.
Nice. Is Bigfoot real?
Yes.
what superpower would you choose?
Presto Changeo. That's my superhero name. Whatever I want. If I see a car, I want it. I reach into my pocket. I always have exact change for whatever I want. I'm Presto Changeo. If I want that house over there, I reach into my pocket and have exact change to buy that house. I'm Presto Changeo with my superpower, exact change.
Nice.
I've thought about that.
I started to say you have thought about that one. Favorite food?
Catfish.
Favorite movie of all time?
No Time for Sergeants, which is an old Andy Griffith, Don Knotts movie. Oh my gosh, I can't even think of the name now. The British guys, they bang the coconuts together. Oh my god,
Monty Python.
Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Those two are probably my favorites. Yeah.
Nice. Ask permission or beg forgiveness?
Beg forgiveness.
Yes, I knew that was the one. When you're the stepchild of radio stations, you ask for forgiveness later.
Oh yeah.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
A nickname your parents used to call you?
Rick. My real name is Eric.
Right.
But when I was born, the only person that called me Eric from the day I was born is my dad. I was born in 1965, and at that time, Ricky Nelson was the number one entertainer, both on the TV show, Father Knows Best, and he had his music, and that was my mom's favorite entertainer. Ricky Nelson's real name is Eric. So I was named after Ricky Nelson. My real name's Eric, but they called me Rick.
Your biggest phobia?
I'm claustrophobic. If I'm in a place I can't get out of, then I freak out.
If I recall, I think there was a slight crisis in an elevator with you once.
Yeah, I did get stuck in an elevator at ORU.
Yeah.
Like way up there, too, like on the 60-some-odd floor.
What weapon would you use in a zombie apocalypse?
My Glock.
Nice.
I got a Glock 40.
All right, so my final question is this.
All right.
Can you remember the lyrics to the Red Dirt Radio Hour?
It's the Red Dirt Radio Hour. It's the Red Dirt Radio Show. Kick back and let the good times roll.
That one's going to be close. I'm going to defer that one to the judges. We've dug back in the archives, and here's Little Texas with the Red Dirt Radio Hour theme.
Times roll. It's a Red Dirt Radio Hour. It's a Red Dirt Radio Show. And it's a Red Dirt Radio Hour. Kick back and let the good times roll.
Oh, the judges say it's close enough. Congratulations. Good job. So how did that become about? I mean, was that just something you guys just...
They wrote it.
They
wrote it. And they recorded it before we even started the show, of course, because that was the theme song to the show. And it's cool because, we recorded those shows only one time a month. We'd get together like on a Thursday night and we'd record 4 shows that ran on Sundays. So we just got together once a month. But, working at KVOO, we'd have artists coming in there every week or doing whatever. And so whenever an artist would come through, when Taylor Swift came through there, Lone Star, and I remember Tim McGraw one time, we'd had all these artists. Phil Vassar did it on a keyboard. And it was a very cool thing.
You know what? I am so thankful that you came out. I have had a ball reliving some of the old memories and just talking to you about your life, man. I mean, there were some things I didn't even know.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry I was late. I was almost an hour late.
It's
Rick
right.
was gracious and said, don't worry about it. No big deal.
See, I figured it's just one of those, your chance to do that radio star thing again.
Yeah, that was
that
it.
Entertainer thing.
I was Kenny Chesney tonight.
I was going to ask you what your favorite Kenny Chesney song was, but
I don't have a favorite Kenny Chesney song, but I'll leave you with my favorite radio artist story. And you may remember this. I'm broadcasting live at KVOO from the Tulsa State Fair, doing the afternoon drive from 3 to 7. And who's playing live that night at the Tulsa State Fair but Terry Clark? I don't know if you know where I'm going with this. So they told me Terry Clark's going to come by the booth and she's going to do an interview. I'm like, all right, that's cool. The night before, one of my kids, I don't remember, had been up all night teething. So I had been up all night long, not a minute sleep. So I'm sitting at the booth at the State Fair. I got one chair and a microphone, and I'm sitting in it, and I'm so dog tired. They didn't tell me what time Terry was coming by because they just said Terry will come by sometime for an interview. So I play a song, and I go over to the booth next to me, and I get a Coke because I need the caffeine to stay awake to interview Terry Clark. Do you know this story?
I do know this
All
story.
right.
Yes. Awesome.
So I'm over there getting my Coke, and as I come back, some lady is sitting in my chair behind my microphone. I'm a fan of Terry Clark. I'd seen her on albums before. Pretty lady. But she had just got off her tour bus, and she was not the prettiest lady at that moment. I think she was in pajamas, and she hadn't had makeup on for days. Looked totally different. Looked like a fair person.
Looks like a carny.
Remember, I know that Terry Clark's supposed to show up in my booth, and I walk up to this person, and I'm like, "Excuse me, you're in my chair." And she says, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, I'm on the radio. That's my chair. I need to do my radio show." And she's like, "Okay, ma'am, again, I need you to get up out of my chair so I can do my radio show.
My chair.
I'm going to call security." I'm sorry, sir. I was just told I was supposed to be here for an interview. And so I'm telling, I don't get it. What do you mean you're here for an interview? And I'm looking her dead in the face. I'm 2 feet from her, just like right here with you. And she said, "I'm Terry Clark." And I was like, oh, wow. Yes, you are, ma'am.
Well, you know what? You just stay seated.
Exactly. So you would think that would be the worst part of it.
No, it's not.
Exactly. Went downhill from there.
It gets better.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, cool. And so we'll do an interview after this song. We'll talk. And I think Dave Block was back at the station because it seemed like he's the one that thought it was the funniest thing in the world. It seemed like he was back at the station running the music and the commercials. So anyway, we come out of the commercials and music, whatever, and I introduced Terry Clark, and she's sitting here with me, and I start talking to her. And the next thing I know, she reaches over and wakes me up. I smooth fell asleep at the Tulsa State Fair interviewing someone that kind of resembled Terry Clark.
Riveting conversation with Terry Clark.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep,
I don't think
that.
I snored, but I remember coming back to the station and Dave Block saying that is the funniest thing I've ever heard on the radio. You fell asleep. And so I had to even later that night, I had to introduce her live on stage. And I went backstage, took some winners back there, and she was like, "That was the funniest thing ever. I'll never forget you because you fell asleep. No one's ever fallen asleep interviewing me." That's the highlight of my career.
Right, there it is right there. That's the most influential highlight of my career, yes. Man, thank you again for coming. I had a blast, and continue prayers for you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate it. My pleasure.
This episode of Behind the Mic podcast was brought to you by Mojo Merchandise. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Join us next time as we go Behind the Mic with Ric Hampton.